3 years ago, I was living in a tiny studio apartment with a leaky roof and a broken heater. I was working 2 jobs just to afford ramen noodles and gas money. Jake had been my boyfriend for 2 years, and I thought he was my whole world. But that night, when I asked him to help me with my car payment, he exploded. "Sarah, you're nothing without me," he screamed. "You can't even pay your bills without begging." The words hit me like a truck. I stood there in my pajamas, tears streaming down my face, feeling smaller than an ant. But you know what? Sometimes rock bottom is the perfect foundation to build your empire on. That night, while he stormed out to party with his friends, I sat on my lumpy couch and made a promise to myself. I was going to prove him wrong in the most spectacular way possible. Little did he know, he just awakened a sleeping giant. But the first step of my revenge plan was so crazy, even my best friend thought I'd lost my mind. I couldn't sleep that night. His words kept playing in my head like a broken record. At 3 a.m., I was scrolling through social media, seeing all these success stories of women who'd built businesses from nothing. That's when it hit me like lightning: real estate. My grandmother had always said land is the only thing they're not making more of. I had $800 in my savings account and a credit score that looked like my age. Not great. But I remembered my coworker mentioning something about house hacking and rental properties. I spent the entire night watching YouTube videos about real estate investing, taking notes on napkins because I didn't even own a notebook. By sunrise, I had a plan that seemed impossible but felt right in my bones. The first step was getting my finances together, which meant making some sacrifices that would shock my old self. I was about to become a woman Jake would never recognize. The sacrifice I made first would make most people think I'd completely lost it. Ladies, when I say I went extreme, I mean extreme. I canceled Netflix, Spotify, my gym membership, everything. I started walking 3 miles to work instead of driving to save gas money. I ate peanut butter sandwiches for lunch every single day for 6 months. My friends thought I'd joined some weird cult because I stopped going out completely. But here's the thing. Every dollar I saved was a dollar closer to my freedom. I picked up a third job cleaning offices at night. While other people were sleeping, I was scrubbing toilets and emptying trash cans, thinking about the empire I was going to build. I sold everything I didn't absolutely need: my jewelry, my designer purse, okay? It was from Target, but still, even my beloved coffee maker. In 6 months, I saved $3,200. Not much by rich people standards, but it was MY money, and it felt like $1 million. Jake had no idea what I was up to because we'd barely spoken since that horrible night. But the real game changer came when I discovered something about Jake that would become my secret weapon. Setting up the revenge through mutual friends, I started learning things about Jake that he'd never told me. Turns out, Mr. You're Nothing Without Me was actually living paycheck to paycheck too. His fancy car? Leased with payments he could barely afford. His cool apartment? He'd been struggling with the rent for months. But the real kicker was when my friend Lisa told me he'd been bragging about how easy real estate was and how he was going to flip houses someday. This man who told me I was too stupid to handle money was pretending to be some real estate expert. I realized something powerful that night. He was just as insecure as I used to be, but he covered it up by putting others down. While he was talking big, I was actually doing the work. I used his arrogance as fuel for my fire. Every time I wanted to quit my third job or eat something other than peanut butter, I thought about his smug face. Then I discovered the perfect property that would change everything, and it was closer to him than he could ever imagine. After months of research, I found it, a duplex in Jake's neighborhood that was priced to sell fast. The owner was moving across the country and needed it gone. It was ugly as sin, but the bones were good. The numbers worked perfectly. I could live in one side and rent out the other to cover most of the mortgage. With my savings as a down payment and an FHA loan, I could actually make this work. My hands were shaking when I called the realtor. "Hi, I'd like to make an offer on the duplex on Maple Street." The realtor was surprised. Apparently, most people were scared off by all the work it needed. But I wasn't most people anymore. I was a woman with a mission. I offered $5,000 under asking price and held my breath. The owner accepted the same day. I remember sitting in my car after signing the paperwork, crying happy tears. I owned real estate. Me, the girl who Jake said was nothing, now owned property in his own neighborhood. But the renovation process revealed something about myself I never knew existed. Honey, let me tell you, I discovered muscles I didn't know I had. I spent every weekend and evening working on that duplex. I learned how to tile, paint, fix leaky faucets, and even do basic electrical work from YouTube University. My manicured nails became a distant memory, but my confidence grew with every project I completed. The first time I successfully installed a new toilet by myself, I literally did a victory dance in the bathroom. Jake used to tell me I was too delicate for manual work. I was out here swinging hammers and using power tools like I was born for it. My friends were amazed at my transformation. Sarah, you're like a completely different person, they'd say. And they were right. I was becoming the woman I was always meant to be, strong, capable, and unstoppable. The best part? Every improvement I made increased the property value. I wasn't just fixing a house. I was building wealth and proving that I could create something beautiful from nothing. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for, my first tenant inquiry, and you'll never guess who it was. After 3 months of hard work, my duplex was gorgeous. I'd transformed it from a rundown mess into something that looked like it belonged in a home improvement magazine. I listed the rental side for $1,200 a month, which was competitive for the neighborhood. Within 2 days, I had 5 applications. I felt like such a boss, sitting at my kitchen table reviewing applications like some real estate mogul. I chose a lovely young couple who reminded me of my old self, just starting out, working hard, dreaming big. When they handed me that first rent check, I almost cried. $1,200. In 1 month, they were paying me more than I used to make in 6 weeks at my old job. I was officially a landlord, a business owner, a real estate investor. All those things Jake said I'd never be. I took a selfie with that rent check and saved it to look at whenever I needed motivation. My mortgage payment was $950, so I was making a $250 profit every month, plus building equity. I was actually making money while I slept. But that was just the beginning. What I did next would multiply my success beyond my wildest dreams. Success is addictive, ladies. That first rental property was like a gateway drug to real estate investing. I reinvested every penny of profit back into learning and growing. I read every book, listened to every podcast, attended every free seminar I could find. Within 6 months, I'd saved enough from my rental income and side hustles to put a down payment on a second property. This time, it was a small single-family home that needed cosmetic work. I was getting faster at renovations, and I'd built a network of contractors who gave me good deals because I was becoming a regular customer. Property number 2 rented for $1,400 a month with a mortgage of $1,100. I was now making $550 a month in passive income. I quit my third job because I didn't need it anymore. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I had an emergency fund, retirement savings, and money left over for things I actually enjoyed. I was becoming financially free, one property at a time. That's when fate delivered the most delicious opportunity right to my doorstep. 2 years into my real estate journey, I owned 4 rental properties and was making $2,100 a month in passive income. I'd completely transformed my life and my bank account. Then my friend Lisa called with the most interesting gossip. Girl, you'll never guess what happened to Jake. Apparently, his roommate had gotten married and moved out suddenly, leaving Jake scrambling to cover the full rent on their expensive apartment. He was posting frantically on Facebook, asking if anyone knew of affordable rentals in the area. My heart started racing. This was it. The universe was literally serving me my revenge on a silver platter. I had just purchased my 5th property, a beautiful 3-bedroom house that was perfect for a single guy. It was in his price range, in his preferred neighborhood, and it was gorgeous. But here's the thing, he had no idea I owned it. The listing was under my business name, SG Properties, and I used my middle initial instead of my first name. When his rental application landed in my inbox, I almost spit out my coffee. There it was, in black and white. Jacob Miller, applying to rent MY property. His credit score was worse than mine used to be, his income was barely enough to qualify, and his references were questionable at best. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. This man who told me I was financially irresponsible was now begging to rent from me. I sat at my desk for a full 10 minutes, just staring at his application, feeling a mix of triumph and disbelief. He'd written a sob story about needing to find a place quickly due to unexpected circumstances, and how he was a reliable, quiet tenant who always pays on time. I had to laugh. His rent history showed 3 late payments in the past year. But you know what? I'm not a vindictive person. I'm a businesswoman. His application met my minimum requirements, and his deposit check was good. Plus, I had some educational experiences planned for our landlord-tenant relationship. I approved his application that same day, but I had one special condition that would set the stage for the ultimate reveal. I could have handled everything through my property management company, but where's the fun in that? I told Jake, through email of course, that the landlord preferred to handle the lease signing personally. I scheduled our meeting for a Saturday afternoon at the property. I spent that whole week planning my outfit, professional but stunning. I wanted to look like the successful businesswoman I'd become. The night before our meeting, I could barely sleep. This was it, the moment I'd been unconsciously working toward for 2 years. I practiced what I'd say in the mirror. Should I be cool and professional? Dramatically triumphant? I decided to let the moment guide me. I arrived at the property 30 minutes early to make sure everything was perfect. The house looked amazing. I'd had it professionally cleaned and staged. I checked my reflection one last time in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at me was confident, successful, and powerful. Jake was about to meet the real Sarah, the one he said didn't exist. The moment he walked through that door, his face went through about 5 different emotions. I heard his car pull up and watched through the window as he walked to the front door. He looked smaller somehow. His shoulders were slumped, and he was wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt that had seen better days. When I opened the door, his jaw literally dropped. "Sarah? What are you? How are you? I don't understand." His voice cracked like he was going through puberty again. "Hello, Jake," I said with my biggest, brightest smile. "I'm SG Properties. Welcome to your new home." The confusion on his face was priceless. He kept looking around like he was expecting someone else to appear. "You're the landlord," he stammered. "But how did you? When did you? This doesn't make sense." I gestured for him to come inside, maintaining my professional composure even though inside I was doing cartwheels. "A lot can change in 2 years, Jake. Please come in. We have some paperwork to review." Watching him struggle to process this information was better than any revenge movie I'd ever seen. But what I said next made him go completely silent. As we walked through the house, I could see Jake trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the broken girl he'd left behind. "This place is really nice," he said quietly, running his hand along the granite countertops I'd personally selected. "Thank you," I replied. "I've put a lot of work into making my properties attractive to quality tenants." The word properties made him stop walking. "Properties? As in plural." I nodded casually. "This is number 5. I specialize in residential rentals in this area." His face went through about 10 different emotions in 5 seconds. I could practically see the wheels turning in his head, trying to figure out how the girl who couldn't afford car payments was now his potential landlord. We continued the tour, and I pointed out all the premium features, the renovated bathroom, the hardwood floors I'd refinished myself, the energy-efficient appliances. With each room, he got quieter and quieter. Finally, we sat down at the kitchen table to review the lease terms. That's when I delivered my favorite line. When I said those magic words, he actually started stammering. "So Jake," I said, opening my professional portfolio, "let's talk about expectations. As your landlord, I have certain standards for my tenants." The word landlord seemed to hit him like a physical blow each time I said it. I went through the lease line by line, explaining the terms in my most professional voice. Rent is due on the 1st of each month. Late fees apply after the 5th, and I require 60 days' notice for any lease termination. He nodded along, but I could see his mind racing. When we got to the section about property modifications, I said, "I trust you'll take good care of my investment, Jake. This house represents years of hard work and careful financial planning." That last part was intentional, a direct reference to his old criticisms of my money management. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Sarah, I have to ask, how did you afford all this? I mean, when we were together, you were always struggling with money." I smiled sweetly and said, "Well, Jake, turns out I was capable of a lot more than either of us realized." His next question revealed just how little he understood about the woman I'd become. "But seriously," Jake pressed, "did you inherit money or something? Win the lottery? I'm just trying to understand how this is possible." I could have been offended by his assumption that my success had to come from luck rather than effort, but instead, I found it hilarious. No inheritance, no lottery, Jake. Just good old-fashioned hard work, smart decisions, and believing in myself. I pulled out my phone and showed him photos of me renovating the duplex, covered in paint, installing flooring, learning to use power tools. I built this business from nothing. Literally nothing. Remember that $800 I had in my savings account? That was my down payment on my first property. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the photos. "You did all this work yourself?" "Every weekend for 2 years," I confirmed. "Turns out I'm pretty handy when I put my mind to it." Who knew? The irony wasn't lost on either of us. He used to call me helpless, and here I was, fixing houses and building wealth while he couldn't even keep a roommate. Then he asked the question I'd been waiting 2 years to answer. Jake set down his pen and looked me straight in the eye. "Sarah, I owe you an apology. What I said that night, about you being nothing without me, that was cruel and wrong." I appreciated the apology, but I had something more important to say. "You know what, Jake? You were absolutely right." His face showed confusion mixed with regret. "No, Sarah, I was being an ass. Let me finish," I interrupted gently. "You were right. I was nothing without you. But not in the way you meant." I leaned forward, my voice growing stronger. "I was nothing like the weak, dependent woman you thought I was. I was nothing like someone who needed a man to define her worth. I was nothing like a person who would stay small to make others feel big." His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "That night, when you said those words, you set me free. You showed me exactly who I didn't want to be. And for that, Jake, I actually owe you a thank you." What I said next left him speechless for a full 30 seconds. "Thank you, Jake, for showing me my own strength. Thank you for making me realize I didn't need anyone's permission to succeed. Thank you for being such a spectacular example of what I didn't want in my life." I could see him processing my words, trying to figure out if I was being sarcastic or sincere. But mostly, I continued, "Thank you for underestimating me so completely. It made proving you wrong so much sweeter." That's when it clicked for him. The full scope of what had happened. He looked around the beautiful house, then back at me, then down at the lease agreement where he'd be paying me rent every month. This is actually happening," he said quietly. "Oh, it's happening," I confirmed. "The question is, are you ready to be a responsible tenant? Because unlike our old relationship, this one comes with actual consequences for bad behavior." I slid the lease across the table with a smile. "Initial here, sign there, and welcome to the new dynamic, Jake." But the real shock came when I told him about my business expansion plans. As Jake signed the lease with shaky hands, I decided to share just how much his nothing ex-girlfriend had accomplished. "You know, this house is just the beginning," I said casually, pulling out my business portfolio. "I'm closing on properties 6 and 7 next month. There's a small apartment complex I'm looking at for next year." I showed him photos of my other properties, my business cards, even a newspaper clipping from when I was featured in a local real estate investor spotlight. 5 rental properties generating over $3,000 a month in passive income, I continued. Plus, I'm working on getting my real estate license to expand into sales. Jake stared at the portfolio like it was written in a foreign language. "Sarah, this is incredible. You built a real business." "I built a real life, Jake. The life I was always capable of living once I stopped listening to people who thought small." I closed the portfolio and smiled. "But enough about me. Let's talk about your move-in timeline." Then he said something that revealed he still didn't quite get it. Jake shifted in his seat and said, maybe we could grab dinner sometime. Catch up properly. It's amazing what you've accomplished, and I'd love to hear more about it. I had to pause for a moment. Was he seriously trying to ask me out? His new landlord? The woman whose heart he'd shattered? Jake, I said carefully, I think there's been a misunderstanding. This is a business relationship. Professional only. His face flushed red. Right, of course. I just thought, since we have history. We do have history, I agreed. History that taught me exactly what I don't want in my life. I'm not the same person you knew, Jake. I don't date tenants, and I especially don't date men who think so little of women that they need to tear them down to feel important. The words came out firm, but not cruel. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was just establishing boundaries. Clear, professional boundaries that the old Sarah never knew how to set. His reaction to my boundary setting was unexpected. Instead of getting defensive or angry like the old Jake would have, he nodded slowly. You're right. That was inappropriate of me. I guess I'm still trying to figure out how to interact with this version of you. There was something different in his voice, respect, maybe even a little awe. This version of me is the real version, Jake. The one that was always there, waiting for the right opportunity to shine. I gathered up my papers and stood up. You can move in any time after the 1st. Rent is due by the 1st of each month. There's a convenient online portal for payments. Any maintenance requests go through the system, not directly to me. He stood too, extending his hand for a professional handshake. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Sarah. I know I don't deserve your kindness after how I treated you. I shook his hand firmly. This isn't kindness, Jake. This is business. Don't confuse the two. But internally, I was proud of how far we'd both come. The first month of being his landlord brought some surprises I never expected. I'll be honest, I was expecting problems. Late rent payments, complaints, maybe even some passive-aggressive behavior. But Jake surprised me. His rent was paid 3 days early every month. He kept the house immaculate. When a small plumbing issue came up, he reported it through proper channels and was completely respectful to my contractor. It was like having a different person as a tenant. Through my property management portal, I could see he was taking better care of my house than he'd ever taken care of his own apartment when we were dating. Part of me wondered if this was some kind of long-term manipulation tactic, but months went by with the same pattern. Professional, respectful, responsible. Maybe seeing my success had actually inspired him to get his own act together. Or maybe he was just terrified of getting evicted by his ex-girlfriend. Either way, it was working out better than I'd imagined. Still, I kept our interactions strictly business and maintained healthy skepticism about his motivations. But then something happened that tested both of our new boundaries. It was 11 p.m. on a Tuesday when my phone rang. Jake's name on the caller ID made my stomach drop. Tenants only call that late for emergencies. Sarah, I'm so sorry to call this late, but there's water everywhere. I think a pipe burst in the basement. I could hear genuine panic in his voice and the sound of running water in the background. Okay, Jake, take a deep breath. First, do you know where the main water shutoff is? I stayed on the phone with him for 20 minutes, walking him through the emergency steps while I got dressed to come over. When I arrived, I found him soaked from head to toe, sitting on the front steps looking defeated. I tried to stop it, but I made it worse, he said. For a split second, he looked like the broken boy I used to try to fix. But I'm not that girl anymore. You did fine, I said, grabbing my toolkit from the car. Sometimes these old pipes just give out. It's not your fault. Working together that night revealed something unexpected about both of us. We worked side by side for 3 hours that night, mopping up water, assessing damage, and implementing temporary fixes until my plumber could arrive in the morning. Jake didn't complain once, even though he was exhausted and soaked. He followed my instructions without question and actually proved pretty helpful. Hand me that wrench, I said, squeezing under the basement stairs to access the pipe. The blue one or the silver one, he asked. Blue. As he passed it to me, our hands touched briefly, and I felt nothing. No spark, no longing, no old feelings. Just two people dealing with a plumbing emergency. It was oddly liberating. When we finally finished at 2 a.m., we stood in the kitchen surveying our work. We make a good team, Jake said quietly. We make good landlord and tenant, I corrected, but without harshness. That's what good working relationships look like, mutual respect and cooperation. He nodded, understanding the distinction. The old Jake would have pushed the boundaries. This Jake seemed to actually get it. The next morning brought a conversation that changed how I saw everything. The plumber arrived at 8 a.m. and confirmed what I'd suspected. The pipe had been deteriorating for years and finally gave way. Not much you could have done to prevent it, he told me. These old houses, it's just part of the deal. After he left, Jake appeared at the door with 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this after our late night. I accepted the coffee gratefully. Thank you. And Jake? You handled that really well last night. A lot of tenants would have panicked or blamed me for the old plumbing. He sat down on the front steps, and I joined him, keeping a professional distance, of course. Sarah, can I say something? He asked. I know this might sound weird, but last night was the first time in years I felt like I handled a crisis well. Usually, I just fall apart or get angry. But watching you take charge, stay calm, actually know what to do, it made me realize how much I've been drifting through life. I sipped my coffee, processing his words. What he admitted next gave me a completely new perspective on our past. The truth is, Jake continued, staring into his coffee, I was always threatened by your potential. Even when we were dating, I could see you were capable of more than you believed. It scared me because I knew if you ever figured that out, you'd realize you didn't need me. This wasn't what I expected to hear. So you tried to keep me small? I tried to keep you dependent, he admitted. Because I was terrified of being alone. I thought if I could convince you that you couldn't survive without me, you'd never leave. The honesty was stunning. And painful. Jake, that's emotional abuse. I know, he said quietly. I know that now. Therapy has been educational. I sat with this revelation for a moment. The old me would have tried to comfort him, to minimize the hurt he'd caused. The new me recognized his honesty while maintaining my boundaries. I appreciate you telling me that, I said finally. It helps me understand what happened between us. But I had something important to tell him that he needed to hear. Jake, I need you to know something, I said, setting down my coffee cup. What you did to me was wrong, but it also saved me. He looked up, confusion clear on his face. I spent so many years making myself smaller to fit into other people's expectations. Not just yours, my family's, my friends' societies. I was so busy trying to be what everyone else wanted that I never asked what I wanted. I could feel the truth of these words as I spoke them. Your cruelty forced me to choose, stay broken or fight for something better. And Jake, I'm a fighter. I just needed to remember that. His eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Sarah. For all of it. I forgive you, I said, and meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean going backward. It means being free to move forward without carrying your baggage. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, 2 people who had found peace with their past. That conversation changed our entire dynamic in ways I never expected. After that morning, something shifted. Jake became not just a reliable tenant, but someone I could actually respect. He started therapy, got serious about his finances, and even began taking better care of himself. I watched from a professional distance as he slowly became the person he'd always had the potential to be. Our interactions remained strictly business, but they were pleasant business. He'd send polite emails about minor maintenance issues. I'd respond promptly and professionally. When his lease came up for renewal, he signed without drama and even thanked me for being a fair landlord. Sometimes I'd see him in the neighborhood, walking with confidence I'd never seen before. He'd wave politely, I'd wave back, and we'd both continue on with our separate, better lives. It was exactly how it should be, 2 people who had learned from their past and grown into their potential. The old Sarah would have seen this as a happy ending. But the new Sarah knew it was just the beginning. Because by now, my empire was growing faster than I'd ever imagined. While Jake was becoming a model tenant, my business was exploding. I'd expanded to 12 rental properties, hired a property management company, and was making $8,000 a month in passive income. I quit my day job and became a full-time real estate investor. I bought a beautiful house for myself, with cash, in the nicest part of town. My Instagram account, where I shared real estate tips and transformation stories, had grown to 50,000 followers. Women were messaging me constantly, asking how I'd done it, thanking me for inspiring them to chase their own dreams. I'd even been invited to speak at real estate investment conferences. The girl who used to eat ramen noodles for every meal was now teaching others how to build wealth through real estate. I'd written a business plan to expand into commercial properties and was looking at opening a real estate education company. Every morning, I woke up excited about the possibilities ahead. I'd built something bigger than revenge. I'd built a legacy. But the most satisfying moment was still to come. 2 years after Jake became my tenant, I received a call from a local magazine. They wanted to feature me in their 30 Under 30 Success Stories issue. The interview was scheduled for the same day Jake's friends were helping him move some furniture. As the photographer was taking pictures of me in front of my latest property acquisition, I saw Jake across the street, watching with what looked like pride and amazement. After the photo shoot, he approached me. "Congratulations, Sarah. That's incredible." "Thank you," I replied simply. "You know," he said, "I tell people about you now. About how you built all this. You're like a legend in our friend group." I smiled, remembering the days when those same friends used to hear him complain about my financial struggles. "I'm just a woman who decided to bet on herself, Jake." Turns out, it was a pretty good investment. As I walked away, I realized that his opinion, good or bad, no longer mattered to me. I'd transcended the need for his validation entirely. And that's when the most unexpected opportunity of all presented itself. The magazine feature led to something I never saw coming, a call from a major real estate conference asking me to be a keynote speaker. "We want you to tell your story," the organizer said. "From financial struggle to real estate success. Our audience needs to hear that it's possible." Standing on that stage, looking out at 500 people eager to learn, I felt the full weight of my transformation. 3 years ago, I began. Someone told me I was nothing without them. Tonight, I want to tell you about the most expensive words ever spoken, because they cost him everything and gave me the world. The audience was captivated as I shared my journey from rock bottom to real estate mogul. I talked about eating peanut butter sandwiches, learning to swing hammers, and the night I realized I was capable of so much more than I'd ever imagined. When I mentioned that my ex was now my tenant, the crowd erupted in applause. "Ladies and gentlemen," I concluded, "never let anyone convince you that you're small. You're not too much. You're not too little. You're exactly enough to build the life you deserve." The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Backstage, women lined up to share their own stories of transformation. But the real surprise was waiting for me in my hotel room. Back in my hotel room, I found a text message that made me sit down hard on the bed. It was from Jake. "Sarah, I watched your speech online. I'm so proud of who you've become. You were right. You were never nothing. You were everything I was too scared to appreciate. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." I stared at the message for a long time. 3 years ago, these words would have meant everything to me. Now, they were just nice. Confirmation of something I already knew. I texted back, "Thank you, Jake. I'm glad you're finding your own path too." And I meant it. Not because I needed his approval, but because I genuinely hoped he was growing into a better version of himself. The difference was profound. I was responding from a place of strength and security, not need or hurt. That night, I realized I'd achieved something more valuable than revenge. I'd achieved indifference to his opinion of me. The next morning brought an opportunity that would dwarf everything I'd accomplished so far. My phone rang at 7 a.m. with a call that changed everything. "Ms. Sarah, this is Jennifer from Reality TV Productions. We caught your speech online, and we'd like to discuss a show opportunity with you." Apparently, they wanted to create a reality show called From Nothing to Something, following women as they rebuilt their lives after major setbacks. They wanted me to host it. "You'd help other women transform their lives while building your own media empire," Jennifer explained. "We're talking about a 6-figure hosting contract, plus executive producer credit." I couldn't believe it. 3 years ago, I was hiding from creditors. Now, television producers were calling me with life-changing opportunities. "I'll need to think about it," I said, trying to sound professional while internally screaming with excitement. After I hung up, I looked at myself in the hotel mirror. The woman looking back was confident, successful, and ready for whatever came next. Jake's cruel words had launched me into a stratosphere he couldn't even imagine. But before I could celebrate, I had to make one important call. I called my mom first. "Honey, I'm so proud of you," she said through tears. "I always knew you had it in you." Then I called my best friend Lisa, who'd watched my entire transformation. "Girl, you're about to be on TV. This is insane." But there was one more call I wanted to make. I dialed Jake's number. "Jake, it's Sarah. I wanted to let you know that I'm probably going to be moving forward with a TV opportunity. I'll need to sell some of my local properties, including your house." There was a pause. "Wow, Sarah. TV? That's incredible. Don't worry about me. I've actually saved enough for a down payment on my own place." Turns out, having a responsible landlord taught me a lot about being a responsible tenant. I smiled. "That makes me happy to hear, Jake." "Really?" "Sarah," he said quietly. "What?" "Thank you. For everything. Even for the hard lessons." "You're welcome, Jake. Take care of yourself." As I hung up, I realized this was the perfect ending to our story. 6 months later, my life had become something I could never have imagined. From Nothing to Something became a massive hit. Every episode featured women who'd been told they were too much or not enough by people who should have lifted them up. We showed their complete transformations: financial, emotional, and spiritual. The show was renewed for 3 seasons before the first one even finished airing. I'd become a household name, written a best-selling book, and started a foundation helping women escape financial abuse. My speaking fees were now 5 figures per event. I owned a production company, a real estate empire, and had investments I didn't even fully understand. The girl who used to count pennies for gas money now had financial advisors managing my wealth. But the most satisfying part wasn't the money or fame. It was the thousands of messages from women saying I'd inspired them to leave toxic relationships, start businesses, or simply believe in themselves again. Every success story felt like validation that my pain had been transformed into purpose. Jake's cruel words had become the catalyst for helping millions of women find their strength. And then came the moment that proved how far I'd truly come. At a charity gala for my foundation, I was mingling with donors when I spotted a familiar face across the room. Jake was there with a woman I didn't recognize, both dressed elegantly and looking genuinely happy. Our eyes met across the crowded ballroom. He smiled and gave me a small wave. I waved back, feeling nothing but peace. Later, as I was giving my speech about empowering women to build financial independence, I saw him in the audience, nodding along with genuine respect. After my speech, he approached with his companion. "Sarah, I'd like you to meet my fiancée, Maria." "Maria, this is Sarah, the woman whose success story literally changed my life." Maria shook my hand warmly. "Jake talks about you all the time. He says you taught him what real strength looks like." "He's being too kind," I replied. "We both learned important lessons." Jake smiled. "Sarah, would it be okay if we made a donation to your foundation? Maria and I would love to support the work you're doing." I was genuinely touched. This was closure I never knew I needed. That night, I realized I had one final revelation about this whole journey. Driving home that night, I thought about how different this story could have ended. I could have stayed small, stayed broken, stayed convinced that I was nothing without him. Instead, his worst moment became my best opportunity. The cruelest thing anyone had ever said to me had become the foundation of everything I'd built. I pulled into the driveway of my dream house, the one I'd bought with cash from my real estate empire, and sat in my car for a moment. The woman who'd cried herself to sleep in a broken-down studio apartment was now a millionaire, a TV host, an author, and an inspiration to women worldwide. But more than any of that external success, I'd found something priceless: unshakable self-worth. I no longer needed anyone's validation to know my value. I'd learned that the opinion that matters most is your own, and that the person who can hurt you most is yourself, if you let others' words become your inner voice. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Thank you, Jake, for setting me free." But this story isn't really about revenge at all. Here's the thing about revenge: the best kind isn't about hurting someone back. It's about becoming so successful, so happy, so fulfilled that their opinion of you becomes irrelevant. It's about transforming their poison into your power. When Jake told me I was nothing without him, he thought he was destroying me. Instead, he gave me the greatest gift possible: the motivation to discover who I really was. Real revenge isn't making someone suffer, it's making them irrelevant to your happiness. It's building a life so beautiful that you genuinely hope they find their own version of happiness too. The night Jake became my tenant wasn't about humiliation, it was about demonstration. I demonstrated that his assessment of me was wrong, not through words, but through actions. I demonstrated that a person's past doesn't define their future. Most importantly, I demonstrated that the only person whose opinion of you truly matters is you. Once you believe in yourself, everyone else's doubt becomes just background noise. And that brings me to why I'm telling you this story. If you're watching this and someone has made you feel small, worthless, or incapable, I need you to know something. They're wrong. They're not wrong because I say so or because it sounds nice. They're wrong because every single day, ordinary people do extraordinary things. Every single day, someone who is told no finds a way to create yes. Every single day, someone transforms their pain into their purpose. You have gifts, talents, and potential that no one else can see right now, maybe not even you. But they're there, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Sometimes that moment is a crisis. Sometimes it's a cruel comment. Sometimes it's just Tuesday, and you decide you're tired of settling for less than you deserve. Your transformation doesn't have to look like mine. You don't have to become a real estate mogul or a TV host. You just have to become the fullest, truest version of yourself. And when you do, you'll realize that the person who tried to diminish you actually did you the biggest favor of your life. They showed you what you're made of. But there's one more thing you need to know before we finish. The most important lesson I learned isn't about real estate or business or even success. It's about self-worth. You cannot build a life bigger than your belief in yourself. For years, I let other people's opinions become my reality. I let Jake's voice become my inner voice. The real transformation didn't happen when I bought my first property or made my first $1,000. It happened the moment I decided to stop believing lies about my own potential. So here's my challenge to you: stop asking for permission to be great. Stop waiting for someone else to believe in you first. Stop making yourself small to make others comfortable. Start today. Start with one small step toward the person you know you're meant to be. Maybe it's taking a class, starting a savings account, or simply looking in the mirror and saying, "I deserve better." Whatever it is, do it. Because 3 years from now, you want to be telling your own transformation story, not still waiting for someone else to write it for you. And as for Jake and me, well, that story has the perfect ending. Last month, I received a wedding invitation. Jake and Maria were getting married, and they wanted me there. Not as his ex-girlfriend, but as someone who'd played a crucial role in his growth story. I didn't go. That chapter of my life is beautifully closed, but I did send a gift and a note, wishing you both a lifetime of building each other up instead of tearing each other down. 2 weeks later, I got a photo in the mail. It was Jake and Maria at their wedding, but attached was a newspaper clipping. Jake had started a nonprofit helping men recognize and change toxic relationship patterns. The headline read, "Local man credits ex-girlfriend's success for inspiring his life change." I laughed out loud. Even in his healing journey, I was still leading the way. But you know what? That's exactly how it should be. Some people are meant to be cautionary tales. Others are meant to be inspiration. I chose inspiration, and it made all the difference. So can you. So there you have it. My ex becomes landlord story that nobody saw coming. From relationship breakup to landlord success, I transformed heartbreak into real estate empire. Becoming my ex-boyfriend's landlord wasn't planned revenge, but watching him sign that rental lease after our breakup? Pure poetry. While I never had to evict my ex from the rental, our tenant-landlord breakup story became the ultimate ex-partner-landlord transition. This breakup and rental lease journey taught me everything about turning pain into profit. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming irrelevant to someone's opinion of you. What's your transformation story? Share it in the comments below.